We have Judith Blackstone here, and she is, in her organization, is a member of the USABP. It's the Realization Process, and she has a book that's out at this time, and it's something that you'll want to catch. I know you can see it on Amazon, and the book is Trauma and the Unbound Body, The Healing Power of Fundamental Consciousness. I'm sure if she would like, we'll talk about that, but I just wanted to highlight that for those of you who did not catch that. There's wonderful reviews about it, so I'm excited that it's out there and available for the somatic community. Thank you, Judith, for putting that together. And there's one Amazon writer says, I love this book. In her first sentence, she says, wholeness is not a vague idea, but a lived experience. So Judith, thank you for coming. Welcome everybody to a lived experience through Judith, who is going to give a presentation. But before we do that, I wanted to do something that's been kind of fun, and that is just ask you, Judith, a couple of questions. And really it's just to get to know you. And the first right off the bat is that what made you decide to go into this profession?
The profession of teaching the realization process?
Well, they're not quite yet. First, you started out as a therapist, right?
Actually, they developed about the same in parallel lines, really around the same time. We're going back many years, of course. I had been a professional dancer, and I injured my back, and I really needed to heal myself, and I went on a long journey of healing. And I became quite intrigued with the people I met, for one thing, the therapists and the body workers, the spiritual teachers, and I was quite attracted to the way they were in their lives, and I decided I would like to be like them. And then I actually had people coming to take dance classes with me, and I was discovering various things in my own healing process that I began to teach them. And that's how the realization process started. Wow.
And at what point did you begin to realize, oh, I need to take this and to teach it?
Well, I started teaching it right away because even though I was quite injured and, spent a lot of my time just lying on the floor of my dance studio, people were coming to work with me. They were coming to study with me, and I had to teach them something. And so I had begun to experience what it's like to tune into the internal space of the body, to feel energetic movement in the body, and even something a little bit deeper, more subtle than that. And so right away, I had all these other bodies. And I think that was a very good thing, because it means that the work right from the start developed not just for my own issues on my own body, but also in response to several other people. So I was really teaching it right from the beginning.
And were there those who guided you, or some of those, anybody from the past that inspired you or helped you sort of hone your skills? And
I had so many teachers, so many different influences. It's hard to point to just one, but the core of the work really developed out of kind of desperation, not actually receiving the healing that I needed as I went to these various people, because the injury was very deep. It had to do with many levels of my being, and they really, they weren't able to help me that much. So I just lay on the floor and tried to figure out what was wrong, and the work really came from there. But of course, I studied to be a psychotherapist, at an institute in New York City. I got my master's. I studied to be an Alexander teacher. I went to India for many times and studied with teachers there. So, I had many influences.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thanks for just giving us a little intro into your past, and now take it away and share with us all that you prepared.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, thank you all for coming. I am going to teach the two main embodiment practices of the realization process today. And the realization process, and I see that most of you are new to it, the realization process is a series of practices, a series of meditative attunement practices for uncovering an aspect of ourselves, for actually experiencing ourselves as pervaded by a very subtle level of consciousness. And this level of consciousness has been mentioned in both Hindu and Buddhist ancient texts, at least in the more advanced texts of the self-realization lineages. So it's the space itself, the pervasive consciousness that we're going to attune to today, has been known about for a long, long time. What we do that's a little bit different here than most of the spiritual teachings is we enter into this pervasive space through the internal space of the body. Because if we just simply let go of ourselves from the outside, we generally just have a kind of an energetic expansion, a kind of spacing out. But to actually experience that very subtle consciousness pervading our body and environment, we need to be deeply within our own body as well. Now, when we uncover this, and I call it fundamental consciousness, but it has many different names in the spiritual literature. When we uncover this level of fundamental consciousness, we do experience it pervading our whole body as if we were made of consciousness. And at the same time, we experience it pervading everything in our environment, the desk, the trees, other human beings. So the interesting thing about it, and of course what's very important in terms of psychological healing, which is what I'm going to focus on today, is that we get to experience our own individual being deeply and in a unified way, what feels like the ground of our being, the unified ground of our individual being, at the same time as we transcend our individual being and we experience very deep contact with the world around us, even that sense of oneness, of being made of the same very subtle, basic stuff, this very basic, subtle consciousness. So it means that we can relate to other human beings without losing inward contact with ourselves. And this, of course, goes a long way to helping heal our fear of other human beings and our protection against intimacy with other people. Before I say anything else about it, I would like to lead you through the first practice so that then when I talk about it, you have a sense of what I'm referring to. And this is the longest practice we do in the realization process. It does take about half an hour. So come sit up, make yourself comfortable but upright. And before we even start the practice, I want to do a little attunement just to show you, in case this is a new experience for you, the difference between being aware of the body and actually inhabiting the body, because we're going to be inhabiting the body. So come rest your hands, palms down on your legs. I did get to read some of your background, so I know that for many of you, you know very well what the difference is between being aware of the body and being in it. But just in case this is a new experience for you, rest your hands, palms down on your legs, and take a moment to become aware of your hands. Now, in becoming aware of your hands, you may notice how warm or how cold they are. You may notice if they're relaxed or a little bit tense. Right? And you may notice that you're observing your hands in a kind of top-down way, right? Top-down focus. And that's being aware of your hands. And now enter into them. See if you can feel that you're actually present within the internal depth of your hands. So it's even as if the hands are conscious all the way through the internal depth of them. And that consciousness is you, not something separate from you. So you are present within your hands. And that's what we mean by embodiment in the realization process. And now we'll go into the practice. So sit up. You can close your eyes if you're comfortable with your eyes closed. Focus on your breathing to begin with. Using the breath to help you feel present right there in your own environment, that you're breathing that air in your own room. And silently counting 3 counts to inhale, 3 counts to exhale, so the breath becomes smooth and even. And if you're a big thinker, you can rest your thinking mind on your breath. Now bringing your inhale inward through your head so that you use your inhale to make deep inward contact with yourself, and the exhale releases, goes wherever it goes. And now come down to your feet and enter into them, just the way we did with the hands. See if you can feel present within your feet. And this is deep contact with yourself inside your feet. Make sure you can stay in your feet as you continue to breathe. Just breathing normally, but make sure that the inhale doesn't lift you up away from your feet. And now attune to the quality of self inside your feet. Just the feeling of that quality of self. Right? Not an idea, but a feeling. And now feel that you're inside your ankles and your lower legs. All the way back to your calves, all the way back to the back of your ankles. And attune to the quality of self inside your ankles and your lower legs. Now feel that you're inside your knees. Come on down into your knees until they feel soft. And balance your awareness of the space inside both knees. Find both those internal areas at the same time. You'll find right away you need a fine mind for that, right? That you're not going back and forth, but you're finding both those areas at exactly the same time. And let yourself feel the stillness of the balanced mind. Right? We're not holding still. It's still because it's balanced. Now feel that you're inside your thighs, from your knees all the way to the hip sockets. Come settle down into your thighs, let them soften, deep contact with yourself inside your thighs. And attune to the quality of self inside your thighs. Now feel that you're inside your hip sockets. Here we need a very fine, thin mind to get inside the hip sockets. From the inside of your hip sockets, you may be able to feel the internal space of your upper thighs from your hip sockets and the internal space of your lower torso at the same time. See if you can. So that you're living right in the transition between your legs and your torso inside your body. Balance your awareness of the space inside both hip sockets. Find them both at the same time. And now feel the stillness of the balanced mind. And at the same time, let yourself feel the movement of your breath. So the mind is still and balanced. The breath is moving. And now feel that you're inside your pelvis. Come on down into your pelvis until you feel comfortable sitting in your pelvis. And attune to the quality of your gender, however that feels to you, inside your pelvis. Bring your breath down into your pelvis. Feel the breath move through that quality of gender. Liam, I've just gotten a chat that someone has lost volume. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I hear you fine.
Okay. If anyone else is not hearing me, then chat and let me know. I've turned up my computer a little. Okay. All right. Now come down to the very bottom of your torso. See if you can inhabit the whole pelvic floor. Okay, including the sit bones, right? Even inhabiting your sit bones. And once again, let your breath adjust to being that far down in your body that your inhale doesn't lift you up away from there. Now find the center of the bottom of your torso. Open that area. Let yourself receive an upward coming current of energy. Comes up on its own. We're just opening to it. Right? Upward thread of energy, very fine current of energy coming up from the center of the bottom of your torso into your pelvis. This is a practice, so you may not experience this today. If you were to practice it, eventually you would. Let's see if you can today. Just open to that upward current. Let it come up into your pelvis. Now feel that you inhabit your midsection, the whole area between your ribs and your pelvis, including the solar plexus area under your ribs. Let that soften and be part of the whole midsection. Take a moment to really experience yourself living there inside your midsection. and attune to the quality of your power, your personal strength inside your midsection. And of course, this is good power, like the power of a waterfall. Right? Your own personal strength. Bring your breath down into your midsection. Feel the breath move through the quality of power. Now find a point in the innermost core of your midsection. So we're focusing inwardly as deeply as you can without strain. And then open that area, deepen the midsection, settle the area, and let yourself receive that upward current. Now feel that you're inside your chest. And again, the whole area. So all the way to your back, so that you're even inhabiting your back, upper back, all the way out to the sides. Let yourself settle in your chest so that it feels like you're sitting in your heart. And attune to the quality of your love inside your chest. Doesn't need to be a big feeling, just a little of the tenderness inside your chest. Bring your breath down into your chest. See if you can still stay settled there as you bring your breath down into your chest and feel the breath move through the quality of love. Find a point in the innermost core of your chest, right? As deeply inward as you can focus there. Open that area, settle the point, receive the upward current. And again, this is a very fine thread of energy coming up from the center of the bottom of your torso now into your chest, if you can feel it. And now feel that you're living inside your shoulders until they feel soft at the edges. And attune to the quality of self, that feeling of self inside your shoulders. And now feel that you're in your shoulder sockets, again with that very fine, thin line. You may even feel a little spark of energy when you really get into the shoulder sockets or the hip sockets, right? Inside the joints. Little spark of energy. And from the inside of your shoulder sockets, you can feel the internal space of your upper arms and the internal space of your upper torso at the same time. So there's no gap there. You're living right in that transition between your arms and your torso inside your body. And now balance your awareness of the space inside both shoulder sockets. Find them both at the same time. And if you find that you're going back and forth between them, see if you can refine your consciousness a little bit Find them both at the same time. Once again, feeling the stillness of the balanced mind, the breath moving through the stillness without changing it or disturbing it in any way. Feel that you're inside your arms, that you inhabit your arms, your wrists and your hands, all the way to your fingertips, so that they feel like your arms, your hands. And attune to the quality of self inside your arms, your wrists, and your hands. Now feel that you're inside your neck. You inhabit your neck. There's another place that we often leave out, so take a moment to really experience yourself present, living there inside your neck. Right? You're inhabiting the whole transition between your head and your torso. And settled within the neck. Right? We tend to lift up there. Really settled within it. Attune to the quality of your voice, your potential to speak inside your neck. What that feels like. Bring your breath down into your neck. Feel your breath move through the quality of your voice inside your neck. Now find a point in the innermost core of your neck. Let that point settle and receive the upward current. And now feel that you're inside your whole forehead, all the way around to the sides of the forehead, so that you're inhabiting the whole width of your forehead. And here's a chance to let your forehead really relax, let it soften. It should feel human, part of the rest of you, right? Not something separate. And staying that soft, that alive in your forehead, find a point right in the center of your forehead. And in this work, we're not working between the brows, but a little bit higher up, center of the forehead. Keep that point steady as you continue to breathe. If you're an advanced meditator, or if this is just very, very easy for you, then as small as you can find that point, the better. Right? Even as small as the tip of a needle. Tiny. And now get back behind the point so that you're seeing it from behind it, from inside your head. With practice, if not today, you may see a point of light there, or sphere of light. And now come down, feel that you're inside your eyes. And let your eyes soften. Really let them rest. Let them feel continuous with the rest of your face. And now feel that you're living behind your cheekbones, all the way back to your hairline. And inside your nose, all the way to the tip of your nose from the inside. Here you may find another little tiny chakra, little tiny vibrational point, the tip of the nose from the inside. And now feel that you're living inside your jaw, even inside the jawbone, your mouth, your lips, and your chin. And feel that you're inside your ears. Now, not too high up in the ears, right through the centers. And now let yourself enter into and inhabit your whole brain. Right? All the way to the bottom, the sides, the top, the back, the front of the brain. Your whole brain. And even the brain can rest, right? Even the brain can be soft. And attuned to the quality of your understanding, what that feels like inside your whole brain. Now bring your breath straight back through your head on the inhale. Let it release, let it go wherever it goes on the exhale. Feel the breath move through the quality of understanding inside your brain. Right? There's even a feeling that you can nourish your brain with your breath. And now find the center of your head. And this point is somewhere between your ears. You have to find it by the feeling of it, as a vibrational feeling. The very center of the internal space of your head. The depth of your head. And let that point settle and receive the upward current. That current still coming from the center of the bottom of your torso, if you can feel it today. And now you can let it keep on going out through the center of the top of your head, keeping the top of your head very gently settled so that fine current of energy can go right through it. Now feel that you're inside your whole body all at once. So if we say that the body is a temple, then you're sitting inside the temple with nothing left out. And breathing. Right? And this means deep contact with yourself everywhere in your body at once. See if you can feel the wholeness of that. Right? That one being. Attune to the quality of self in your whole body. Keeping your eyes closed, find the space outside your body, the space in the room. And let yourself experience that the space inside your body and outside your body is the same continuous space. The same one expansive space inside and out. So you're still in your body, haven't moved from there, but you're permeable. You're transparent in that sense, pervaded by space. I'm calling it space because that's how we experience it, but it's this fundamental consciousness. And if this is fairly easy for you to feel, then let yourself experience that you are this consciousness. It's not something separate from you. And the breath is moving through that space. Now slowly open your eyes. We just have a few more steps with the eyes open. Come open your eyes. And with your eyes open, feel that you're inside your whole body all at once. Right? So even though the world appears and it's quite vivid, you still have your own temple to sit inside. So you still have that inward contact with yourself everywhere in your body. And attune to the quality of self inside your whole body. Find the space outside your body, the space in the room. And once again, experience that the space that is inside your body is the same exact expanse of space that's outside of your body. Right? You're in your body, but you're pervaded by space. And let yourself experience that the space that pervades you pervades everything in your environment. Right? So without leaving your own body at all, because the space pervades you, pervades the desk, pervades the chair. So everything is transparent in that sense, permeable. Again, this can take a little bit of practice, but you may be able to experience it today. Take a moment to let the space do the hearing. And of course, we are the space, so I'm not saying there's sounds without a hearer. We're right here hearing, but the experience is that the space is doing the hearing. Right? So it's a non-grasping. Right? It's letting the sounds move through the space without losing your attunement to that pervasive stillness. So the sounds move, the space is still. Same with the visuals, right? Everything that you see comes right out of the space without any effort on your part. As if the space itself were doing the seeing. And now both together, sounds and the visuals at the same time. Right? Letting everything just appear in the space just as it is. And the same space pervades your whole body. Okay. And relax. Okay. So I am going to open up for questions, but not quite yet. First, I want to talk a little bit about how we can apply this to addressing the effects of trauma. In the realization process, we kind of come from both directions. We work to inhabit the body and attune to that ground of being, what feels like our ground of being. And there are also specific practices for experiencing fundamental consciousness with another human being. And then there are practices for discerning with that subtle focus that we cultivate as fundamental consciousness, for discerning and releasing the exact pathways of the way we have constricted ourselves in reaction to traumatic events. So just talking about the embodiment now, just the being in the body, of course, has many, many applications. It's a kind of regaining of ourselves, a reclaiming of ourselves from whatever happened. And the interesting thing about fundamental consciousness is that it's never been injured. Once we attune to it, we regain a ground of our being that's never been hurt. Right? That's more subtle, that's deeper than any of the events, any of our depression or anxiety, or any of our memories or emotions associated with the traumatic experiences. So when we attune to it pervading our body, we have that deep internal contact with ourselves, that underlying wholeness that has never been injured. We also regain the qualities of our being, and they take a while to experience. you were probably all able to experience the quality of love. But the quality of power is sometimes taboo for some of us. The quality of voice is something that we have often suppressed. In fact, all of these qualities are what have been suppressed in reaction to trauma. So when we're in a traumatic event, we don't just simply constrict our body, we constrict the aspect of ourselves that's been impacted by the trauma. So if we've been overpowered, for example, we will constrict in our power, right? And then we lose not only the sense of ourselves as a viable human being amongst other powerful human beings, we also lose agency, right? A very important thing to regain as we heal from trauma. That sense of agency, knowing what we want and being able to go towards it, right? So that attuning to the quality of power can go a little ways towards regaining what we may have suppressed in reaction to being overpowered. Same with, of course, our heart, our ability to love and to respond emotionally. That's one of the main things we shut down in reaction to loss of love, loss of approval. The quality of our voice, the actual experience of our ability to speak, free flow of our voice, our ability to think, not to go into brain freeze, but to allow the free flow of our thoughts, to allow ourselves to feel our sexuality and our gender, however we experience our gender, that is a part of ourselves and that we can be present there and experience sexual arousal, sexual responsiveness. That, of course, has been constricted in any sort of sexual trauma. So we're going right to attuning to these aspects, these what feel like innate because we don't create them, we don't imagine them, we uncover them. These innate qualities of our being, qualities and functions of our being. We also come back to that sense of unity. The fundamental consciousness pervading our body is a unified dimension. And so the fragmentation, the shattering that we experience in trauma can begin to heal as we attune to this underlying sense of unity. And the fragmentation in our reception and response to life also begins to heal. In other words, we're able to think and to feel at the same time. We're able to speak from our heart as well as from our cognition. Right? We're able to feel power and love at the same time. Right? So the various fragmentations that we experience in trauma begin to heal as we embody ourselves. Along with the feeling the love in our chest comes some self-love. It's very hard to maintain the kind of self-loathing that most of us grow up feeling to at least some extent, because we've all misbehaved, we've all been, punished, even if we grew up in a very loving home. There have been moments when we lost that love for ourselves, when we felt we had lost it from others. But when we experience love in our chest, it's very hard to maintain that self-loathing because we're made of love. We feel that love that's just there. It doesn't even need an object. It's just an aspect of who we are. I just got a little message, but I'm just going to ignore it. Okay. So we get to that sense of unity, and interestingly, there's also innate in this fundamental consciousness a sense of well-being, a sense of happiness. So we have an inner, I know this sounds too good to be true unless you've begun to experience it, but we actually have an inner source of happiness that when we embody ourselves begins to be accessible to us and can go a long way to ridding ourselves of chronic depression. We also come to a kind of grounding in ourselves, settledness, right? That cohesiveness is a settledness, a kind of trusting of our internal ground, trusting of the ground below us, so that we can really feel held by the earth, even if we were not perfectly held by our parents. We can begin to feel that we actually belong in our body, that we're held by the earth. And we come to that grounding. And that can be an antidote to some extent for anxiety, because anxiety is an upward lift, right? You have the expression, my heart was in my throat, right? You have that upward anxiety, which so many sensitive people have, right? And as we settle, that anxiety can actually, that habitual anxiety can actually begin to dissipate. So those are some of the ways that being in the body can help us address and begin to heal the effects of trauma. Now, as fundamental consciousness, as I've said, the space not only pervades our own body, but it pervades our environment, pervades other human beings. And this means that we can be in deep contact with another human being without losing contact with ourselves. Extremely important, right? So it means that we neither give ourselves over, abandon ourselves for the needs, for the sake of love, right? Nor do we have to wall ourselves off from intimacy because of our danger, our felt danger that we're going to be annihilated by the other person, right? We maintain our full experience of ourself while actually feeling deeper contact with the other person. And there's actually a resonance in the qualities of our being when we're both attuned, right? When our own self and the other person is also attuned to these internal qualities of the body, there's a resonance between them. And that's a deep, deep contact, right? So love resonates with love, power with power, right? So it's obviously not a power struggle. It's a joining, a communion of power, a communion of personal strength, understanding with understanding, right? And this gives us a kind of trust of other human beings because we actually experience that resonance, that kind of kinship, deep kinship with other people, even with people we just pass momentarily on the street, right? And so it begins to feel a lot safer to be with other human beings. Okay, now I'm going to open up for questions. Are you going to take care of that, Liam? I don't hear, you're muted, yeah.
I'm back, yes. I'm here for, you can either hit the Q&A and ask questions, or certainly the chat.
We have 9 chats, let me see.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
None of them are really
No, those are old, I think, right?
Old. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you have any question on anything I've said so far, or on the practice.
I have a question.
Yes.
So just to start it out, can you kind of hit back on that last part about attuning to one another? Like where you said even when you're walking past a stranger,
that's right.
I'm trying to go into my body and get that sense. Can you revisit that part?
Yes. You know what, Liam? You and I can even do this, and people are seeing both of us, are they? We can even do this right here on Zoom, which is so interesting. Take a moment and come and have at your chest.
Okay.
And now let yourself find the space inside your chest and the space inside my chest at the same time. Isn't that funny? And now we have transcended technology, really. We can't be stopped. And now one more step, Liam. Attune to the quality of love, just a little tenderness in the chest. And now attune to your, yes, he's very good at that. Attune to your quality of love and mine at the same time. That's right. Feel that?
Yeah.
So that's just a little bit of the practice that we do with partners in the work. We do all the areas, but we can even do it on Zoom. It's so interesting to me that we can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty phenomenal to go there so quickly. Wonder if somebody needs to get a little cue, to do that.
Definitely. We do a whole practice of it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Marla has a question.
Yes.
Marla says, how do you introduce this process to people who are locked in trauma? Great question.
Right. Well, when I work with people who are really in trauma, I begin with talking. I don't begin with the practices. I begin like probably any therapist, I imagine, would begin by really getting to know the person, by having them talk and begin to trust me and to really hear them, really listen to them, right? And then we might find just one part of the body where they feel safe to enter into after we've spent, I don't know, months maybe talking, depending on where the person is in terms of embodiment. But if they feel safe, even just to enter into their hands or into their feet, any part of the body that they feel safe to enter into, right? That they begin to regain contact with themselves, that they begin to feel that they haven't been demolished by whatever happened to them, right? That they can start to know themselves again. And then we little by little add to that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Then I would just, let's go to the next one. That was well said. Not a question from William Thompson. It has been lovely to be able to be with you for this last hour, Judith. Thank you. We have much in common in our approach and understandings. I am needing to sign off now and head into my office. Group beginning in 30 minutes. And thank you, Liam. Thank you, William. From one William to another. See you soon.
Thank you, William. Okay.
And then Peggy, okay. How to help people that have been violated and not been so able to keep selves safe, be able to balance of safety with unsafe people and kinship to feel with others.
Yes. Well, before we do the relational work, in fact, we don't even do the space outside the body if someone has been severely traumatized. We just do the being in the body. We don't even do the space through, right? And so little by little that they have that internal depth, that sense of taking up space, of being a being, of knowing themselves in that way. And of course, we go very slowly. This is, I've taught you just the whole practice, and I demonstrate a little bit of the relational work with Liam, but that's not something I would do right away, of course, with somebody who comes to me severely traumatized, right? So first there would be talking, and then there would be just the being in one part of the body, and then just being in the rest of the body as they're able to do that. And of course, as they enter into parts of their body, it will bring out more of the emotional release and so forth. So we work very slowly in that way. We do have practices in this work which I'm not going to be able to demonstrate to this kind of group that I can't even see. But we have practices for exactly working with the way that we have constricted ourselves in reaction to trauma. But that also doesn't come into play for a long while, until the person really has some inner contact with themselves, so that then when they release those holding patterns, those constrictions, they're not just releasing and just becoming vulnerably open, but they're releasing into that sense of ground within themselves.
So I think, just for clarification, the exercise that we just did, is that something you would do with your client as well, where you're basically attuning? Like, I'm going to go here.
Exercise?
Yeah.
Maybe after a year, so. Yes.
Yeah, okay, so that's right. Okay,
Yes.
So that's not something you would do, you might do even without them knowing?
No, I never do anything like that without the person knowing.
Okay.
I really don't, I don't believe in that, doing that. But once they really are comfortable being in their body, and of course they trust me, then we might begin to do that, maybe sitting way across the room from each other first. But it's extremely good for people particularly who've been like walled off from other people, who will even come in and say that they're somewhere on the spectrum, which of course they may be. But it also may be that they've just shut down to relationship because of the fear of it, because of the way relationship took place early in their lives. Mm-hmm. So here they have a sense of actually being inside their body, in contact with themselves at the same time as they make contact with someone else. But yeah, we would work towards that very slowly.
Awesome. So Peggy says, no, wait, sorry, we did Peggy. And then Daniel, thank you for your practice. Wonderful. Is this similar in any way to working with Kundalini or prana in the yoga tradition? How is it different?
Well, we do work we work with the subtlest energy, and that upward current, when we can really feel the thread of it, is what they call Kundalini in the Hindu system. And the next practice that we're going to do in this class, we actually work to cultivate that most subtle level of the energy system. I'm making a distinction in this work between matter, energy, and fundamental consciousness. And it's a really important distinction. So these are three ways that we can experience ourselves. We can experience ourselves as physical matter. Sitting out there, listening to this, you may even want to try this out because it's a very interesting thing to do. But you feel yourself as physical matter. And if we were sitting in a group, you would feel the whole feeling in the room change as everybody clumps into these little discrete, separate clumps of matter. And that's probably the way maybe most of the people experience themselves, just as, separate bit of matter with a little breath and some mind. Or we can experience ourselves as energy, as that flowing energy, right? That streaming, pulsing, vibrating energy. So go ahead if you're trying this out yourself. Let yourself feel yourself as energy. Many sensitive people grow up experiencing themselves as energy, and it can become quite uncomfortable because as energy, we kind of merge with everything around us. We go to a party and we smush into the other people, and we lose track of ourselves. But of course, it's a more sensitive attunement to ourselves than simply matter. Then we can experience ourselves as the stillness of fundamental consciousness, right? So matter, the movement of energy, the stillness of fundamental consciousness. When we know ourselves as the stillness of fundamental consciousness, we get to the most subtle level of our energy system. So there's an interesting thing. So we don't leave energy behind. We get to, the energy system itself is designed on a spectrum from dense to subtle. We have all kinds of energies moving through us. But this, what they call Kundalini energy in the Hindu system, is the most subtle energy. And when we get to know ourselves as fundamental consciousness, there's a kind of a radiance on that consciousness, or in that consciousness, which is this very, very subtle energy. And so the last practice that we'll do before we stop for today will be cultivating that subtle energy.
Okay, excellent. There's Peggy circled back. I was thinking more how to help people set boundaries with unsafe people. I'm thinking of empaths I work with to help them protect themselves from absorbing too much.
Yes. So this work was really meant for empaths, It was designed for empaths. And rather than having to create boundaries, inhabiting the body is actually our self-inherent boundary, self-arising boundary. We have an envelope, right? We have an envelope to our being that we actually experience when we inhabit our whole body. It's a permeable envelope, right? But instead of, and I work with many therapists in this to learn this, because it's a kind of a further step from sitting with another person and mirroring or entraining their emotion, their pain, taking on their pain, right? Knowing who they are by experiencing it, running it through our own body. We can go as fundamental consciousness, we can go one step more subtle and actually feel to some extent what's happening over there in their body without running it through our own body. So that inner contact with ourselves is our true boundary. And we actually, even though I'm talking about oneness, and this is a non-dual system that I'm teaching, we actually experience other people across distance, separate from ourselves. Right? So both oneness and separateness at the same time. Also, let me say one more thing for the empath.
That's excellent. You're on a roll.
Right. We have a practice in the realization process where we practice the teacher practices making a very subtle energy current through the other person's fundamental consciousness. So first through the space out here, and then even through the body, so that and again, this is an advanced, right? This is not something you would do with your traumatized clients, obviously. But once people are comfortable and really attuned to fundamental consciousness, they can practice letting vibration move through that fundamental consciousness, right? And we practice it by we call it throwing the pea, this tiny little imaginary little red ball through the space. And then once we can feel that pass through, we can go into like a grocery store and feel all the vibrations of those people just pass through the space. We have a choice. We can take in another person, or we can let their vibrations pass right through that fundamental consciousness. It can't be broken, right? This is the Vajra, dimension. It cannot be hurt, cannot be broken. It's just space. Right?
Wow. Phenomenal. Oh boy, it's really happening here. So that was Peggy. Chris Clancy, will you speak to merging with others? The tendency that some people have to leave their bodies or absorb others' emotions and perhaps identify them as one's own. That's good.
Yeah, so I thought that's what I was just exactly speaking to, how we can know our own experience from the experience of somebody else, because we're to some extent seeing and feeling it over there in their body at the same time as we're in our own body feeling what we're feeling. So there's no mistake that way. We're not running their feelings through our own body at all. The merging is an energetic movement, right? We merge energetically with other people. We come out of our body like this. But as fundamental consciousness, we're right inside our own body, right? And we can let the vibrations, even if they're merging with us, we can let those vibrations of that person go right through us without taking them in at all, right?
Yeah. Well, as sort of a follow-up to that, having run some groups myself, and they're sure that there's that shared energy experience. And so at times I'm finding myself checking in that I'm feeling something coming up, and I don't know if it's mine or theirs or the group or the person who might be engaged. In that moment, is there sort of a check-in to, or sometimes I just bring it up. I'm having something. Is anybody else having that?
So this kind of realization of ourselves as fundamental consciousness, which is something that as we practice, we become stable in, that we're just living in our body. So that's pre-checking in, right? So we actually don't have to check in. We know right away, oh, I'm feeling sad, right? Because I feel sorry for that person. Or that person is so sad that I am mirroring it in my own body. But I know that I'm doing it because I'm right here, knowing what I'm feeling at all times. I haven't left myself, right? And I haven't, it's a wonderful feeling to sit as fundamental consciousness in a group and feel the space pervade our own being and all of our experience and pervade everybody in the group and what this person is feeling over here and what that person is feeling over there. So it becomes a lot less mysterious, why we're feeling something, usually, right?
Well, so you're saying that if I'm feeling something, it might be in empathy for someone, but I also might be in a countertransference or something else, right?
It might be, but what I'm saying is you'll know right away.
Okay.
Not like after the fact, you have to check in and go, gee, what was that? Why am I feeling this way? You'll know right away, oh, that person's crying. I feel sorry for them, right? They lost someone. I know what that feels like. I feel sorry for them. Or, maybe I'm acting out, but even there, you're like, you can see that suppressed anger. Oh, I'm feeling angry. But I can see right away. So that person's suppressed anger. Or maybe not. Maybe it reminds me, but I'm right inside my experience the whole time.
Right. Yeah. So that's the actual, what you just described is the process.
Yes.
In a way, right? Yeah.
As fundamental consciousness. So we're not in this kind of dream state at all. It's really crystal clear. And we're in our own experience, and we're just, to the extent that we can, seeing and feeling what other people are feeling in their bodies.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Okay, so then let's go to Kirsten. Judith, would you say that fundamental consciousness is the same as the ground of being, or is the ground before the arising of FC?
Kirsten, I'm using them interchangeably. Those are just my terms. I'm using them as the same.
I'm hearing somebody knows a little of this, because what is FC for those who are?
Fundamental consciousness. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Kirsten has worked with me a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm using ground of being and fundamental consciousness interchangeably.
Okay. And then, so then we have Shelley. Can you explain more about what you mean by non-dual? Thanks.
Well, non-dual is just the buzzword, now for a group of teachers like myself who are teaching an experience of unity. Amongst us, we have quite a lot of disagreement about what non-duality is, and many teachers are teaching it as just a clear, direct experience of the present moment, and others are teaching it as the actual realization experience of oneself as a unified ground. So interesting. These 2 points of view have been tracked in Tibetan Buddhism for 1,000 years at least, called Shentang and Rangtang, that there are these 2 ways of understanding non-duality, and 2 ways of teaching it, and 2 ways of experiencing it. So in the realization process, I'm teaching the actual realization of ourselves, what the Tibetan Buddhists would call the Shentang view. I'm teaching the realization of ourselves as the ground.
Interesting. And again, the realization is, can you describe that in the body again?
Yes, it feels like we're actually made of consciousness and conscious everywhere, so that we can immediately experience the internal space of our whole body at once. Right.
And does it also have to tie into that permeable the world as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We experience both at the same time.
And what is that term you use when it's not the permeable, but I feel like it's like when you break the wall sort of between the outer world and the inner, what is that right there?
You mean what did I call it?
For that, where you suddenly, that slips away?
Oneness. I mean, that's an experience of oneness. Yeah. Yeah, it's been in the spiritual literature, all along. But it has been considered an advanced state of being, an advanced realization, and I think these days it's really not. That pretty much everyone I teach is able with some practice to experience this.
Great. Okay. Hello, Judith and Liam. Thank you for sharing your beautiful energy with us. Thank you, Lena. Judith, would you tell us about trainings that you offer, and do you have any coming up?
Yes. Actually, there's a training starting right away this month, the meditation training. There's 3 trainings that I teach, 3 certification trainings. And one is the meditation aspect of the work, one is the embodiment aspect of the work, and one is the healing ground, which is the psychotherapy aspect of the work. And of course, there's tremendous overlap. The main practices are taught in all 3. And then there's specific practices that are focused on in each of those 3. I'll be teaching the Healing Ground certification training online starting in October, and that goes for 6 months with a break in January. All of this is on the website, realizationprocess.org. But we have one opening left in the meditation training, which starts next month, and that's taught in person in 2 5-day modules, and I teach just the second module. And there's an opening in Ann Arbor if anyone wants to get there.
Wow.
There's one opening there for part 1, and then I'll teach part 2 up here in Woodstock, New York. But the online trainings, I'll teach the whole thing. It starts in October.
Fantastic. Okay, let's go last one before we jump in. Just to clarify, Thomas asks, Is the attunement with others you were speaking of comparable to resonance in somatic experiencing?
Yes, it's quite like that. I mean, there's a real sense of connection, of deep contact with another person. And all of the main qualities of our being have that capacity to resonate with the qualities of another person. These seem to be universal qualities. You know, just the way we can recognize love wherever we see it, you know, anywhere in the world. We can also recognize that quality of power, quality of understanding. All of these qualities seem to be universal.
Okay.
Time to teach the second practice?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. So the practice I just taught, which is called Attunement to Fundamental Consciousness, is one of the two main practices of the realization process. And this practice I'm going to teach now is the other one, and it's much shorter. And it's called the core breath. Okay? And as I said, we're going to cultivate this very, very subtle energy. And we're going to work right with the central channel or Sushumna. And this is the experience of a very subtle channel that runs vertically through our torso, neck, and head in the depth of our body. So close your eyes if you're comfortable with your eyes closed. And just take a moment again to focus on your breathing, just to settle again. Come on down to your feet. Feel that you're inside your feet. And this is real contact with yourself. See if you can. Everywhere in your feet. Each time you go to do it, a little bit more of yourself. And feel that you're inside your whole body all at once. Now find the center of your head. And that same point that we worked with in the last practice, right? In the internal depth, the very center of the internal space of your head. And bring your breath into the center of your head and back out again. So the breath comes in through both nostrils, makes a single stream of air that can go right into the center of the head. The exhale is release, goes wherever it goes. And let yourself feel that just by being in the center of your head, it enters you into your whole body, the whole internal space of yourself, just by being in the center of your head. For most of us, that means coming down a little bit. And now initiate the breath from within the center of your head, as if you had air there in the center of your head that you could breathe. Right? So now we're not bringing the breath to the point anymore. We're starting the breath within the point. And the breath is coming in through this tiny little opening. So it's a very subtle breath, but it can be a long breath. Right? You can take in plenty of air through that tiny little opening. And just by breathing in the center of the head, you may be able to feel a resonance, a gentle vibration through the whole vertical core of your body. Now find your heart center. You can leave go your awareness at the center of the head, and you're just in the heart center, the heart chakra. And this point is in the center of your chest, but deep in the core of your body. So as inwardly as you can focus within the chest. And just by being in the heart center, it enters you into your wholeness, gives you access everywhere in your body at once. Now initiate the breath from within the heart chakra. Same thing. Breath is coming into this tiny point in the depth of your chest. It can be a long breath, but it's a very fine, subtle, thin breath. And feeling the resonance, it's going to be upward and downward now through your whole subtle core of your body. And see if you can really initiate the breath within the point. So not bringing the breath to the point, but starting it there. And very, very gently. Now find your pelvic center. And this point is in the center of your pelvis, but deep in the core of your body. And same thing, just by being in the pelvic center, it enters you into your internal wholeness. Initiate the breath within the pelvic center. Feeling that resonance, that very gentle vibration throughout the whole core of your body. You really need to take this breath deep, deep, deep in the core, through that tiny, tiny point. Now we're going to do all 3 points. Find the center of your head again. Find the center of your head and your heart chakra, heart center at the same time. Right? Center of your head and your heart center. And now find the center of your head, your heart center, and your pelvic center all at the same time. Here again, this may take some practice, so be very patient with it. If you can, initiate the breath from within all 3 points. Feeling a very gentle resonance, gentle vibration throughout the whole internal space of your body. Now slowly open your eyes. And with your eyes open, find those 3 points again. Center of your head, heart center, and pelvic center. take a moment to experience your environment from this core of yourself. Right? You may find it's a little bit deepening of a perspective. And now initiate the breath from within all 3 points, feeling that same gentle vibration throughout the whole internal space of yourself. Now here's an advanced instruction for those of you who want it. This breath itself is a disentangling breath, and you can use it that way. As you both inhale and exhale, you can use the breath to let go of your grip on both yourself and the room. Everything will still be here, even more vividly, right? So we're not erasing anything at all. We're just, as if we'd been holding on to ourselves, which we are to some extent, and holding on to our environment with our senses. We're letting go of that grip on both the inhale and the exhale from the core of the body. Now, if you can, find the pervasive consciousness that we were just attuning to in the last practice, pervading you and everything else. And let's sit for just a moment, letting go from within the center of the head into that pervasive space, letting go from the heart center into the pervasive space, and letting go from the pelvic center. So we're not leaving the core to do that. We're letting go right there within the core into the pervasive space. So this subtle core of the body, or Sushumna, or central channel, is really our entranceway into fundamental consciousness. And that's one of the reasons that we work with it in the realization process. And you can relax. So again, before I open it up to questions, let me just talk a little bit about the therapeutic application of this practice. And one, of course, is that this core of ourselves is experienced as the deepest inward contact that we can have with ourselves. It puts us right in the center of all our experience. So if we're in a pressured environment, if we experience our childhood home that way and we go home for Thanksgiving dinner or something of that sort, or if we're in a tumultuous relationship, we can put ourselves right in the center of that so that we are responding, but we're not reacting, right? Still, of course, feeling and responding even more deeply, but we're sitting right in the center of it and right in our deepest perspective on both our internal experience so that we can really see what we're thinking, know what we're feeling, know what we're sensing, and also deeper perspective on the environment itself, as if things were actually a little bit further away. Because when we have constricted ourselves in reaction to trauma, we've actually constricted this space that we live in. So we've brought the world closer to us in our attempt to keep it out, right? So as we let go of our grip there, things actually seem a little bit further away as we know ourselves as this pervasive space. We also, as I said before, get to the most subtle level of our energy system, and that helps us, that energy eventually becomes one with our breath and helps us what we call stabilize in that realization of ourselves as that pervasive ground. We also use this very subtle focus, this very subtle attunement to the core of ourselves to discern the way we've constricted ourselves in reaction to trauma. In this work, the realization process, unlike a lot of other somatic therapies, I'm not working directly with the nervous system, I'm working with the fascia, right? And it's through the medium of the fascia. And the fascia is a level of tissue in the body that surrounds every one of our organs, surrounds every shape in our whole body. So it's like a honeycomb, right? And we can constrict through the medium of that fascia deep inside the body, right? We can shut down our ability to love to just a little little bit, right? We can protect ourselves from rejection just a little bit with the smallest movement inside the depth of our chest, for example, right? Still live perfectly normal, still feeling, right? We haven't shut down completely, just that little bit, right? So it's a very sensitive medium, this fascia. And we constrict ourselves, mostly in childhood, but even certainly throughout our adolescence, and even if trauma is severe enough in our adulthood, we constrict ourselves for several reasons to dampen the impact of experience, right? So to keep out angry voices just a little bit, we'll constrict the anatomy of our hearing, right? To keep out unwanted food, we'll constrict the anatomy of our eating, right? Just a little bit, not so that we're going to starve growing up, but just so that we're a little bit constricted and we'll feel a little bit of tension when we get to then work to release ourselves in the upper chest and in our throat. So, right, so to dampen the impact of sensory experience and emotional vibration, to suppress internal experience, to suppress our responses to life that may not be met with love or approval. Here's a very interesting thing, that we can't control our experience without tightening our body, right? Like if we go to feel sadness now, right? If you conjure up a little sadness and then you try not to feel it, you'll find that the only way you can stop that sadness is by tightening within your body, right? We can't keep ourselves from crying without tightening the anatomy of our tears. So, right, so to control our responses to life, we constrict ourselves. We mirror our parents and siblings and relatives and later on our peers' pattern of openness and defense so that we can fit in with the family, right? So if the whole family lives way up in their intelligence, but not so much emotionally, we will automatically mirror and imitate and design ourselves to match the family, right? So that we can be part of that family. We also constrict ourselves in response to injunctions such as don't be so loud or don't be so smart. How can we not be so smart? It's easy. All we have to do is contract a little bit in the mechanism of our cognition, and we're just a little bit harder for us to think, right? So the fascia, of course, tightens and actually becomes chronic holding patterns and becomes unconscious parts of ourselves, becomes like the shape of ourselves. And we also create habitual patterns that are more fluid, that we go into constriction and then back out again. We go into constriction when we come across circumstances that mirror the traumatic experiences of our childhood. So we are using this very fine focus that we cultivate by doing this core breath. We're using that very fine focus to focus within these constrictions in such a way that actually they move further into constriction, because nothing's completely still in the body. So they move a little bit further into the constriction, and then they can release along that exact pathway that we've used to constrict ourselves. So it's extremely precise work to find the exact pathways of how we've constricted ourselves. And of course, it's not just somatic work, it's also what memories come up, what our associations are with it. And then, very important step after we've done the release work is to inhabit the part of the body that we have just released, even if it's just the tiniest little bit of release, so that we get more of that internal ground of ourselves. Okay, so now we'll open up for questions again.
So when you mentioned at the end there, you take time for them to inhabit that, that's sort of the positive corrective emotional moment, right?
Yes.
Of a therapeutic treatment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or the otherwise called integration.
That's right. That's right. It integrates it and it becomes part of our sense of that internal wholeness of ourselves.
And a new memory that it isn't and doesn't have to be the way it was.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
We can actually sometimes align with the childhood mentality that first went into that constriction, right? So even though these reactions to trauma, we're unconscious. That agent of the movement is still somehow captured there within that tension. And we can sometimes actually feel that angry 4-year-old or whatever moving into the holding pattern. And that goes a long way to helping us release it.
Yeah. And do you get a sense of like how long to let them sit in that? It seems like the longer you marinate in this state, but.
Well, we're working here with a kind of like a rubber band and release, right? So I actually prefer people not to stay there too long unless it's still moving in further into constriction. If it is, fine. But if they just dwell there, then sometimes they'll just make more tension. So we go as far as it goes and then let go, let it unfurl.
Interesting. Okay. Jasia says, thank you so much. Both of your guided meditations were profoundly centering, relaxing, informative, and simplistically brilliant to access. Thank you. Gratitude. Love these. And Danielle says, do you use touch in your work? If so, why and when? Good question.
I generally don't use touch in my work. This is really it's really helping someone work within their own system. So I very, very rarely use touch unless someone needs that and wants that for a sense of safety. But it's not part of the healing process itself.
Great. We still have time. If anybody else has a question, feel free to chime in.
Okay, so there's a long.
Here we go, Peggy. What are your thoughts on ifs? I could see some ways to integrate this here. IFS, maybe it's, what are your thoughts on IFS? IFS, she's clarifying, correct.
Yeah, I don't know enough to comment on that. Yeah.
Danielle, can you talk about how you work with people who are terrified to inhabit their body? Whew.
Yes, sure. Yeah. Sure. So first, of course, we talk about the reasons for that. And then, many people are terrified to inhabit their body because it was dangerous to be conspicuous, to be there, to be present, or to be conspicuous. Right? So we've abandoned our body altogether. So we're not the one chosen as the object of our parents' anger, for example. So this is something we encounter very often. And again, the talking about all the circumstances, talking about the whole history and all of the relationships, and then finding one part of the body that does feel safe, right? Even if it's, just the nose or just the toes, right? Whatever it is, or just the hands, and really coming into contact with oneself in that part of the body. Right? And then little by little, letting that part of the body that feels safe teach the rest of the body, right? Where else can we go in the body that also feels safe? And we'll often start the release work that, I just quickly talked about the release work, but I'll often start the release work. One thing, I don't do the release work until people really have been able to inhabit their body altogether, right? Because I want them to release into that ground of being. But we start the release work by finding a part of the body that feels safe, that we can go back to if things get too intense in the release work. So we often work with what part of the body feels most comfortable to you. Where do you feel safest or most at home?
This is sort of an interesting, I'll just say what the question is, but you want your client to feel like they're getting something. Is it possible that sometimes this might be so subtle that they're not seeing the impact, and it's hard to get them to come back to do the next piece. Or, I don't know.
I don't introduce it if it's going to be that nebulous for them. Usually it's not all that subtle by the time we get to do it. I mean, it's often quite amazing for them to feel that there's somebody there, right? And that they take up space. That they have internal volume, that they take up space, just the way the people around them seem to take up space, that they also take up space, and that they can feel their own life inside of themselves. So it's not that subtle an experience for most people.
So it's a dual thing. They're taking up space, plus they're also sensing you, the practitioner's presence with them.
Oh, for sure.
And that's a very trusting, comforting.
That's right. The more embodied the therapist is, I think, all the therapists here probably know that. The more in touch with yourself you are as a therapist, the more trustworthy you are.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, so then here we go. Ariel, thank you for this guided practice. It felt lovely and relaxing while connecting to the 3 points along the center. However, when you led the advanced practice of letting go, I noticed a grab of fear in my solar plexus. Can you talk about how you might work with these spontaneous moments of holding?
Sure, we would work with the reason for it, for one thing, and even letting yourself go into the grab, if it's not too frightening to do that, and feel why you're doing that, what you're protecting or protecting against, why that might be happening.
Okay. So it sounds like you pretty much just directly asked them, what's coming up for you? Did you notice what's coming up?
We're in communication the entire time.
Yeah. So is that getting into story, history, sort of, where it could take them out as well?
I have no problem with history. I feel like our history is extremely important to the process.
Mm-hmm.
How we survived, what actually happened in our lives, is a really important part of being able to let go and not reestablish the holding pattern the next time some circumstance is similar to what happened in our childhood. So the cognitive aspect of it is very important.
Great. Okay. Thomas, in your present online embodiment class, you spoke about the space between use as the most intimate experience. Could you explain further?
I didn't quite get that. I spoke about use?
Yeah, USE. Embodiment class, you spoke about the space between, maybe he meant us, I see.
Between us?
Yeah, embodiment class, you spoke about the space between us as the most intimate experience. Yeah, he's confirming.
Okay. I don't know what you mean by that. That's Teddy, right? Why did you bring that up in the embodiment class? I really don't know what that means.
Go ahead, write a little more, Thomas will come up. He says, okay. Okay, so, all right, so Kirsten says, how does the stabilizing in fundamental consciousness usually happen? Can we trust that doing the exercises regularly will take us there?
Yes.
A few
Yes.
years will tell you that, huh? Okay. All right. So then next up, well, maybe you could address a little of that first part. How does the stabilizing in fundamental consciousness usually happen?
Through practice. One day we just find that we're just there, right? It doesn't mean that, every moment we're going, oh, I'm fundamental consciousness. But every time we go to experience that, there it is. So it just emerges. It just appears.
And again, for my own clarification, that would be when I'm feeling present with myself and in relation to the outer world without barriers and
Not only that, but made of this same transparency. So you're looking at, and here's, if anyone's interested in this, here's something to practice, right? To sit with an object in your room and just experience that the space is pervading you and the object. So the object seems to be made of fundamental consciousness just the way you are, right? So everything is both empty and solid at the same time.
Okay. Solid and empty at the same time. Okay. Next up, thank you, Danielle says, for an engaging discussion and practice. I'm curious about the fundamental consciousness from a developmental perspective. Is this something we are born with and uncovering, or develop as we mature?
Mm-hmm. That's a question I can't answer. We haven't found a way to test this in babies, as far as I know. Yeah. It definitely feels like it's already there and we're uncovering it. I mean, that's the experience that this is something we're uncovering. And of course, that's what they believe in Buddhism as well, that this is innate and everybody has it, and we just need to wake up to it, that it's kind of there waiting for us to wake up to it. So that's the traditional teaching, and that's the experience, right? That we're uncovering it rather than certainly not creating it or imagining it, and that it just spontaneously emerges as we open to it. So it does feel like it's already there, but I as far as what we're born with, that I don't know.
Well, I think I was a newborn baby photographer. I would take pictures of babies within 17 hours out of the womb. And it just, like, when you talk about that, it felt like there was no inhibition in them. They were just feel, respond. And I'm wondering if that ties a little to that.
I don't know if it does. I mean, definitely babies are less defended, than 5-year-olds. I mean, there's no question about that. But whether we need to have penetrated through to the subtle core of ourselves in order to actually get to this pervasive space, right? So it's not just openness or lack of defense, but it's really knowing ourselves as this pervasive space.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay, cool. So then, let me do a little dismiss. Okay, Chris Clancy, you're up. Can you share tips to move from realizing fundamental consciousness in a practice time into experiencing this realization in more and more of our daily life?
Yes. Well, we have walking practices where we walk as fundamental consciousness. Sitting with that object is a good thing to do. It's wonderful to feel out in nature, to attune to the space pervading you and trees. Then you even get a sense sometimes of the life force within the tree as the stillness pervades the tree and yourself, pervades the earth and the sky. And then it stabilizes. With that practice, then you stabilize in it and you actually can't get rid of it. It's there no matter what you're doing or what you're feeling. Right.
Awesome. Jasia, the course you lead online, ? Beginning in October. Will it cover all areas for certification, parts 1, 2, and 3?
Each training offers certification, gives you certification in that aspect of the realization process. So the one that's happening online starting in October is the healing ground, the psychological aspect. You would get certification in the healing ground. You get full certification, and that certification enables you to use the work professionally and trains you to use the work professionally. Full certification is awarded when you've done all three: the meditation, the embodiment, and the healing ground.
Judith, this is, I think, important. Your book is out. What did you want us to get out of this book? It's not really a promotion question. It's a serious question. You put time into it. What is there that's different, that ties in, or we should just know today?
Well, it's a lot what I've been talking about today. It's just the specific contribution to the trauma healing field or the psychological healing field from the realization, from the point of view of the realization process, which is I think the addition of attunement to fundamental consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Okay. Anybody else have any closing questions? Is there anything else, Judith, you want to take us out with?
No, we can sit for a moment just to settle after all that talking, if you'd like. Should we do that?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so come sit up. Those of you who've made it all the way through, thank you so much for sticking it out. And now take a moment to inhabit your whole body all at once. And let yourself feel as comfortable as you can in your own body, really resting there. You may be able to feel that the whole internal space of the body breathes very gently. Right? So the internal space of the legs is breathing at the same time as the internal space of your hands, your head, everything breathing at once. And we'll sit like that, just resting for a moment. Now open your eyes and find the space that pervades you and everything else, just to the extent that you can. Right? That you're made of space, that everything around you is pervaded by space. And we'll sit like that for just a moment. Right? We're still in our body, so the whole internal space of the body is breathing, but we're pervaded by fundamental consciousness. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Liam. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes, thank you, Judith. If they have any follow-up questions, I guess maybe they could go to your site for the Contact Us page.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, members and non-members. Welcome. Come back, everybody, and visit us again in 2 weeks. And I'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.